I should be like you, Mel.
Ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to Up the Cherries in all departments. And it is a pleasure to have Manny Thangaduri next to me. How you doing, Manny? Do you know what? So delighted to see you back on this show.
Not half as delighted as me, Mr. Beasley. I am happy to be back. I've missed, coming on here. I also want to say that I'm really happy to see how you've added a lot more people to the network. And I want to give a huge shout out to, obviously, Oliver Hudson and Malcolm Chiverton, who I think were doing the Cherry Slaps, reviewing the Bournemouth Spurs game. And as an Arsenal fan, I'm happy. And you couldn't have scripted it any better.
Honestly, mate, it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We are going to mention one man from that game, but of course, unfortunately, he has departed Dean Court, but we'll go through that and go through his stats. I'm just going to jump into the comments, but if you are new here, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hit the bell button. Sean and family has said, anyone there? Apologies, Sean, for starting a little bit late. And Malcolm said, just can't get the staff these days. Yes, I do apologise for the slow start this evening. Unfortunately, to be honest, it's the tablets that I'm on have made me a little bit more dopey than I normally am. So they've prescribed me something that I can only call floxaloxidine. I don't know how you say it in a million years. It is probably more complicated than any football player's name in the entire world. But you don't really want to be on these. They're the most disgusting tasting tablets on this planet. And of course said, we are live. And Malcolm started with unbelievable, Jeff. And he said, thank you so much to Manny. But you excited for the transfer window, Manny? Just touching upon that first.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, normally when it comes to Arsenal, we don't do too much transfer business in January. And we normally like to get things done at the beginning of the season, then just let everything take care of itself. We seem to have a decent squad, and I'm pretty sure you must have spoken about it with Marty from AFTV. He probably would have told you that we've got a bigger squad now, at least in theory. The problem is we've had periods now where several of our defenders have been injured, and of course, Piero Hinchapi, on loan from Bayer Leverkusen, had a bit of an injury last night, so he had to be replaced by Miles Lewis-Skelly. There's still no Ricardo Calafiori, so our young Hale-End defensive midfielder will have to continue, playing at left back. And I'll be honest, I would be surprised if we buy anyone this time around. We're probably going to look to do some business in the summer because, at least in theory, when it comes to having everything in all departments covered, we seem to have that done in theory. And I'll be very interested to see if we play a reserve team on Sunday against Portsmouth. But as far as the transfer window is concerned, this is also probably a sort of a Hail Mary for certain clubs who might want to see some certain players come right in who could possibly add an X factor. And I'll tell you one club who will be looking to do some good business in January, Aston Villa. Magnificent recovery after a poor start to the season, I should say. But they are third in the Premiership, level on points with Manchester City. Still doing very well in the Europa League. And of course, they will be playing against a Spurs team that might be a little bit demoralised after that shellacking you gave them the day before yesterday. So I think Emery will probably look to get some loan signings. I think there's been some news about him getting a few youngsters through the door to sort of add to the squad. And that they might be one club who will be doing some business. And obviously City also like to do some good business, as we will talk about. And quite a few other clubs will be looking to just top up a little bit. So very interesting indeed to see what happens in this window. And this is probably more exciting than the September one, I would say.
I can tell that you're enjoying every time bringing up Wednesday's game, like I enjoyed it from start to finish, albeit...
Mate, if you're playing against Arsenal, I have to do that.
Oh, mate, honestly, what a result and what an end to the game as well. Whilst the room is filling up, and it is filling up across a number of platforms here as well. We are on Twitch, we're on YouTube as well, and of course it will be going live on Spotify and Apple Music and all that sort of stuff afterwards as well. But whilst the room is filling up, I just want to ask you about the transfer market, because the transfer windows, because I do feel, and I don't know what your opinion is of this, it's inflated the prices of players so much now that do we need to potentially abolish the January transfer window and go back to what it was to actually just kind of stabilise football a little bit more, because there is players going for ridiculous amounts, and it's making it harder and harder and harder for clubs like ourselves to actually compete.
I'm not too sure that's the best way to go, to be honest with you, because look, it's very easy to say that the way things are going right now, it's inflating the value of certain players, as you would say. But I just think, having said all of that, that it's there for a reason. And any complaints about that from other clubs about how they may not be able to do business in January, I mean, that might be sour grapes. And more than anything else, when you talk about the inflation in value, obviously, the bigger clubs will be able to afford it if they have the means to doing so. But there are also situations where some emergency loan moves can take place. And let's not forget, loan moves are a big part of it. I mentioned Aston Villa. Last season, Unai Emery was able to pull off some very shrewd loan moves in bringing in Marcus Rashford and Marco Asensio to Villa Park for their Champions League campaign, and both of them actually went on to play some pivotal roles in helping the club have a pretty good season. Of course, they couldn't quite get it over the line. I think they went to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, the semi-finals of the FA Cup, and of course just missed out on qualifying for the Champions League on the last day of the season. But having said all of that, had it not been for those brilliant loan signings, I don't believe that Villa would have had the season they had. And I definitely would say, more than anything else, that, if you have the potential to make these loan signings permanent, I mean, maybe not make them permanent necessarily, but at the very least, get some players who can do a job for you. Forget about the big money signings. Just the loan signings will also do a job for you. Think of Henrik Larsson when he came to Manchester United. Back in the day. And he played a big role in helping them win a premiership. I think I'll do some research on that. But long story short, I don't believe that, that success would have been possible if Larsson hadn't have joined the club in the first place. So I think I'm not in favour of abandoning the January window, and if people just aren't willing to take advantage of it, then that's just sour grapes more than anything else. You don't need to spend heavy sums of money. Just look for some players who might fly under the radar, but who you believe can do a job for you. And if you can do that and it works out brilliantly, happy days.
It is some spectacle. I've got to be honest. It is some spectacle seeing, like deadline day is a lot better than what it used to be. I remember it used to be last week of March, didn't it, or something? Was it the last Wednesday or Thursday of March? It was a really weird day, and then literally as soon as it closed, but nobody really ever paid much attention to it. It wasn't really broadcast as much. It wasn't a spectacle. I guess now, because of the media attention, that people will, view it. And I think it is probably pushing the prices up. But no, I do get your point, and it does make sense. And of course, I'm going back to the old days. Football evolves, doesn't it, Manny?
Yeah, I get that. And bear in mind, even before the conception of the Premier League, there were players moving around to different clubs in the January-February period. I don't even think we had a window specifically within which you could move, because, you had a situation where some players would move outside the window. So, I'm all for this. And as I said, there's a reason why I consider this to be more exciting than, say, the September window, or even buying some players in the summer to prepare for the club, to prepare for the season, I should say, because this adds a little bit more to the intrigue going towards the end of the season.
100%. Well, I'm just going to quickly jump into the comments because Malcolm's had his say. Winter transfer window is difficult to get quality players in, no matter which club. And he's also put, I would be happy to see the end of the winter transfer window, but there we go. But I tell you what, let's, Manny, move on to our first player, who unfortunately has left AFC Bournemouth. Everybody knows how much I love this man. I absolutely love this man. He is probably one of my favourite players that's played for this club in the last 10 years. And it's this man. Just hate to see that. Antoine Semenyo has left to Manchester City. It was an interesting deal in the end because there was a release clause. Now, the release clause, I understand, was 65 million. Now, of that, Bristol City have a substantial fee to actually be passed over to themselves. But Manchester City have paid a little bit extra based on performances as well. But Antoine Semenyo has left to Manchester City for £64 million. Manny, when this speculation started coming out, what did you actually think? Did you think, because I've known for a long time that Semenyo is a quality player. I was disappointed originally when we signed him. And the reason being, I know this sounds ridiculous, the reason being he was not consistent at Bristol City. However, Andoni Iraola has got the best out of him, and he's got that consistency, which has led to this move. He's always had that quality. You can tell that. But it's the consistency. What did you make of it when you heard that this could be a possibility, Manny?
Something, at the beginning of the season, obviously, you'll remember when the Cherries went over to Anfield and lost 4-2. Semenyo actually grabbed a lot of the headlines for one of the goals he scored late on in the game. And I think that goal, if memory serves me right, put Bournemouth 3-2 behind Liverpool, and it gave you a chance to possibly try and get back to the game. It gave you some hope, only for Liverpool to score a fourth and put an end to it. I could be wrong, and maybe, if Malcolm's in the chat, he'll probably correct me on that. But a lot of the talk was about the possibility of him being snapped up by a bigger team, and it's not just Semenyo, mind you. I take a look at your team right now, Bournemouth, and see at least one or two other players who could very well end up leaving Dean Court for greener pastures. Patrick Kluivert's son, of course, is another one. But as I've said repeatedly, he'll always have a place for Bournemouth in his heart because you were the ones who gave him that chance, that platform to rejuvenate his career. And he's done so magnificently. And now he's back in the Netherlands squad and should be going to the World Cup. And Semenyo is another of those players who, as you've said, you had some doubts about his consistency, but you know the talent is there. And it's really a hallmark of just what a fine manager Iriola is in terms of his talent ID, that he was able to see something in Semenyo and just to bring Antoine in, really. And when you give him that confidence, you ask him to perform a role for you, and he understands perfectly. You know, it just works beautifully. And a slight equivalent, although maybe, I mean, he has been prolific, of course, for his team this season. Morgan Rogers for Aston Villa. When Unai Emery bought him from Middlesbrough, I think a pittance was paid for him, and a lot of people were saying, you know, it was 10 million if memory serves me right, and a lot of people were saying that, you know, the Teessiders have pretty much pulled down Emery's trousers and also taken his boxers as well. But boy, have they been proved wrong. Yeah. And the thing about a lot of these managers, these Basque managers like Emery for several years and now Iriola, is that their talent ID is absolutely amazing. They are very astute in their vision and what they want, the type of football they want their club to play. And they also really, really, really look hard at the type of players they believe will fit their system. Will they get it right all the time? Not always, but more often than not, you can trust them to make the best call. And, you know, it's been a wonderful period for Antoine at Dean Court, and I know he'll be really sad to leave. But I just think the way things are sort of going right now with the club sadly not being in the best of form, and I think it's also fair to say that, you know, European ambitions might possibly be shelved this time around, although, you know, the way things have been going, you just never know what can happen. Maybe it was the right time for the club and the player to part ways. And what's really, you know, heartwarming about this is that Semenyo never really expressed an explicit desire to leave the club. Obviously, you know, if a club like Manchester City comes calling for you, and I'm sorry for turning my head, I've got one eye on the TV. When a club like Manchester City comes in for you, you know, you don't just dismiss it offhand necessarily. And I think Bournemouth will know that, you know, with the money being on offer, you know, you also can't necessarily say no to that, especially if it means that you can spend that wisely and, you know, rejuvenate the squad in some way. And of course, if you're able to secure the loan services of Ethan Nwaneri from my Arsenal, I think that would be a very good move for you. And, you know, if you, I'm sure you'll definitely enjoy Ethan's services, and there's no denying his talent. He's just not able to get into the team at the moment with the level of competition there is. But Semenyo will be a loss. I have no doubt that Bournemouth will recover. And it could very well be that Semenyo might add another dimension to a City team, which is also desperate to overcome that 6-point gap between them and us and just get back on track for the title. And that is why, especially in lieu of last night's performance against Liverpool, I am not ready to pop the champagne just yet. No talk of the title until we're into April. That's the way it should be. But
glass half
like I said,
isn't it, Manny?
Yes, you know, Semenyo is a 24-karat gold player, 24 on his shirt and his trousers. And I have no doubt that he will be a loss, but I have no doubt that you'll recover from it. And I'm sure that if there is another meeting between City and Bournemouth, even if he does score against you, I know he won't celebrate. And I know that he will have a special place for you and Andoni in his heart. No doubt about it.
Yeah, most definitely. I just want to correct something, because it was actually Gary O'Neill that brought in Antoine Semenyo. But it's hard actually, to be honest, Manny, I think is a mistake that's very, very easy to make, because Antoine has actually progressed so much with Andoni Iraola. Andoni has been massive for his career. But yeah, it was Gary who brought him in, but he did certainly kick on under Andoni. I'm just going to quickly go to the comments because I think somebody else is also watching the game between Wrexham and Nottingham Forest. Is this not a Southampton channel? Chris Foran is being cheeky.
Yeah. Yep.
I think
A little
he's
too
quite-
cheeky, if you ask me.
I think
Good
he's
evening,
got a
sir.
smile on his face. A good friend. Yeah, he's being a little bit cheeky because, of course, Forest don't really. Leicester don't really like Forest. So yeah, he's
Yes.
going to be bragging. I will just come back to Sean's comment in just a moment as well. But he said, I think the club have got the best deal we could get. Yes, he's worth more. But when a player has dreams, there's only so much you can do when they have the opportunity. I'm going to come back to that once we go through all the Semenyo stuff, because I believe that's quite a very good talking point. I am going to ignore Chris's next comment because that might be something to discuss at the end. He scored the equaliser to make it 2-2.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you for correcting me.
Trust in the process, Manny. And
I shall cross that bridge when I come back to it, sir.
If he celebrated, I wouldn't mind. I would still clap him. Yeah, I think most people would do. But the number of people that are watching, thank you so much, has increased. I'm wondering if a couple of Man City fans who wanted to find the lowdown on this man, if you are a Man City fan and you are watching this, I love this man and I'm really gutted that you've got him. So if you don't want him, after so many, don't send him on loan to Everton, which is normally what you do. Send him back to us. So yeah, because we will take him in a heartbeat.
And of course, you mentioned Gary O'Neill. He's now got a good job at Strasbourg, having replaced Liam Rosenior.
I couldn't believe this the other day. It was mentioned. In fact, it was Matt that mentioned it. We was walking into the ground, and he said, "I was talking about Liam Rosenior, and of course going to Chelsea, and it's a bit of a surprise, but it's an opportunity that Liam's got to take with both hands." And then Matt said, "You do know your mate Gary? He's gone to Strasbourg." I was like, "What? What?" I think he'll do a good job, and I think actually he might surprise people. But let's park Gary O'Neill. We'll discuss him at the end if ever anybody's watching.
Absolutely.
But a bit of a breakdown of the deal of Semenyo to City, 64 million. City have agreed a deal with Bournemouth outside of Semenyo's £65 million release clause at 62.5 million plus performance-related bonuses worth 1.5 and a 10% sell-on clause. There we go. So it probably is going to be worth more in the long run, but I'm pretty sure Antoine doesn't want to go anywhere. Of course, of that 64 million, I think, and I thought it was 60 million release clause. I saw that on somewhere, but I think there's a lot of figures that have been misjudged. So this is from Sky, so this is more accurate than what I was saying just a moment ago. Ignore what I said a moment ago. I think there's a 20% sell-on clause to Bristol City as well. So they are due. I think it's probably going to work out as about 12 million something. But
and this is another example, Craig, I'm sorry to cut in, about how his former clubs can actually benefit from this in many ways. It's nice to see, money trickling down to these clubs, as it were.
Yes, 100%. 100%. And Bristol City, a club that are fighting to get into the Premier League alongside Chris's Leicester City. But I tell you what, let's just quickly flick over to Semenyo's career to date, and what a jump this has been. Of course, he started at Bristol City, 125 appearances, 21 goals. He did have a loan spell at Bath City. Now, if you follow the National League, which I do, I don't know what it's called nowadays. I saw Enterprise. Is it Enterprise Rent-A-Van or something? It's sponsored by. But I saw it pop up, And, there's a picture of a young Antoine in a Bath City shirt. What a jump up in his career. He did pretty well there. 16 appearances, 6 goals, but you'd expect that. Went to Newport County on loan, 32 appearances and 6 goals for the Exiles. Went to Sunderland, of course, 7 appearances, 0 goals. And then, of course, he come on a permanent move to yours truly, AFC Bournemouth, 110 appearances and 32 goals. But he has proven a real danger in the Premier League for other clubs. And, do you know what? It's just an honour to have watched him play for this football team. And of course, he's doing very well with Ghana. He will be at the World Cup. 32 caps, 3 goals, and he will be playing against England. So, yeah, it will be. Yeah, it's an exciting time in Antoine Semenyo's career. However, in all honesty, I wish he'd stay in, but let's have a little look at, how he rates against the top 5 two-footed players in Europe. He's number 3, and it's not bad as well. Number 1 is Riddle Baku, and as you can see, I won't go all through the stats here. You'll be able to see them on the screen. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Music, then by all means, do click onto this and click onto our YouTube video and have a little look at 26 minutes in. Pedro is number 2. Antoine is number 3. Lacine Sinayoko, number 4. And Benedict Hollaback is number 5. So there we are. That is quite good company to be in there, as you can tell. So, yeah, he's in good esteemed company. Just going to have a look as well. I'm going to make this full screen because otherwise I just won't be able to read it. This is the report from Sky Sports. And compared with other wingers in Europe's top 5 leagues since the start of the 24-25 season, Antoine Semenyo per 90 minutes has scored 0.38 goals, which is high. Considering, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, why could that not be higher? That is quite high for a winger. Shots, 3.13 per 90 minutes. So 3 shots a game. Again, very, very, very good. Assists, 0.14. But then again, he does score quite a few. Pass completion, 21.3. Passing accuracy is 77%. That's very, very good, isn't it, Manny?
Yeah, some wonderful numbers for him. And, it's interesting how you had a stat showing him in among the top 2-footed players in the world. I do wonder, though, obviously, the rankings are sort of based on how many shots some of these players have taken with either feet. I'd be very interested to know if these are only limited to shots on target, which have either resulted in goals or otherwise, or do they include shots off target? But, if you are 2-footed, if you have the ability to obviously play well with either foot and really show your proficiency, that's always going to be a feather in your cap. And that's, obviously I was giving Andoni a great deal of praise, and I think we can still definitely say, as you said earlier, that, Semenyo kicked on really well under Andoni, but it was Gary O'Neill who brought him in. Some managers just bring players in, and obviously due to certain circumstances won't have the opportunity to work pretty well with said players. But with Andoni coming in, I think obviously he will observe these players very, keenly, and observe what they can bring and sort of bring them in. And it's worked a wonderful treat for, I want to say, 18 months for which Antoine has played under Andoni. And, what I see from these stats as a player who is certainly very proactive in the way he plays and also likes to take risks. And, you know, you've got to be willing to take these risks in order to succeed in the Premier League. If you aren't willing to bite the bullet, as it were, if you aren't willing to take a chance on anything, you know, it's not for nothing that we say nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I think if this fellow doesn't make an impact at Manchester City, I'm going to blame Pep Guardiola for not being able to blood him in properly. But like I said, he should add a new dimension to them. And there was also hope that we at Arsenal would probably get him. But, you know, when we have people like Ebery Eze who can't get a game, and also we're fairly decently stocked for wingers at this point, where would we play Semenyo? I know, having said that, we could be selling a few players, though.
We'll park that thought for the moment because we will discuss that at the end. Because I think, you know, that's a very, very good point. And where you come back to Erebeshi Eze at Arsenal and him not getting the game, you know, what could it mean for Antoine Semenyo at Manchester City? You know, as much as we absolutely love him and he's absolute star here, Manchester City have got so much quality in abundance that, you know, they are so dangerous. But we'll come back to that because it's a very, very good point. Long passes completion is 0.75. Chances created 1.28 per 90 minutes. Crosses completed 0.20. Then we go on to the take-ons completed of 1.83, touches 50.89, touches in the opponent's box 5.43. So that's very, very high considering he is a winger. Possession won in the final third, 0.292. Again, very decent stats. Fast breaks, 0.25. Total tackles 1.49. Duels won 6.26. Aerial duels won 2.03, and interceptions 0.31. So that's his stats. Some very, very, very healthy stats there. And even though some people might be thinking those figures look low, they most definitely aren't when you take into comparison with football. But this is what Semenyo has said as the move is completed. Oh, I'm going to hate saying this. I'm going to hate reading this. Manny, here we go. I am so proud to have joined Manchester City. I have watched City over the last decade under Pep Guardiola, and they have been dominant team in the Premier League as well as achieving amazing things in the Champions League, FA Cup, and the League Cup. They have set the highest of standards, and it's a club with world-class players, world-class facilities, and one of the greatest managers ever in Pep. I have so much scope for improvement, so to be at this club at this stage of my career is perfect for me. It's a real privilege to be here. The Etihad is my new home. I can't wait to play in front of the fans here, and I hope to show everyone what I can do. I'm sure he will do. And what now for Bournemouth? We must replace Semenyo in this window, has said Iriola. Yes, of course, we have to assign a winger, Iriola said when asked about if the club would be active in January. Yes, Antoine has played almost every minute with us, so there is a hole there that we have to fill. Obviously, probably not the same skills as Antoine. It can be a different type of player we can sign in the market. It's a market that's not easy because there are not a lot of players available. No one wants to lose a good player in January, but I think we have to look at all the options we have available and try to get it right. Well, there we are, Manny. That's what Andoni has said. And you know, I just want to go back to your point now, which you made with regards to Erebeshi Eze at Arsenal and him not getting the game. And of course, Manchester City, very, very big club, you know, lots of players that, you know, that they've got quality in abundance. And one player that I just want to flag up is Jack Grealish, who, of course, has left Manchester City on loan to go to Everton. You know, this is probably a loan move that he wasn't probably happy with. He probably wanted more time at Manchester City, but how difficult is it going to be for Antoine Semenyo to firstly cement his place in that City side, or do you feel that there is a gap there already, mate?
I do believe there's a gap there. Otherwise, City wouldn't have spent the money for him. And with regard to Grealish, I think I'm going to have to say I disagree with your premise, because Grealish obviously was at a stage where he had fallen out of favour with Pep Guardiola, and it was agreed that a loan move would be the best thing for him. He certainly wasn't going to go back to Aston Villa with the whole history and the friction, and it wasn't going to be decided if the club could really afford to get him in. But obviously Everton made a play for him, and he was willing to go and work with David Moyes. And I think Grealish, he started well at Everton, and he was hitting a bit of a purple patch, but has now started to fade a little bit. And now that he has, of course, been sent off, he was, of course, sent off when Everton played Wolves, and that was really not what Moyes was looking for. I think he'll be banned for one game. It's not going to be a 3-game ban, because I don't think violent conduct was involved, although I could be wrong. But, obviously Grealish had to leave, and I think it is his final season at City, so he's not going to go back to the Etihad Stadium, and he will continue his career elsewhere. Whether or not he plays for England again, that's also completely up in the air. And I think certain players under Pep just, outstay their effectiveness, as it were, in the manager's eyes. I have my own opinions on whether or not Pep can actually get the best out of certain players at times, really. But I do believe that there is a gap. And what's surprising, of course, is that defensively they also seem quite a bit weak. But they're also a team which gives you the impression that attack is their best form of defense. If they're able to score more goals, then, even if they concede a few, it won't be a problem. And yet they've been drawing games recently because they haven't been able to build on the leads they've had, and they've ended up, being pegged back. And it's happened now for 3 games consecutively. So there is an opportunity for Semenyo to play, and they're also going to be playing in the FA Cup this weekend. So there will be some opportunities, obviously. I do believe City are also in the semi-finals of the League Cup, and they will be playing Newcastle, if memory serves me right. So, and there will be some opportunities for Semenyo to play, and he still can win some silverware. He will get his chances to shine and, get into the team. My biggest fear is that Pep Guardiola does seem to be a little bit of a micromanager for some reason or another. And, he has this tendency, like Arteta, I will say, to, look at certain things that certain managers like them would want from their players, but aren't seeing in a certain select few, and try and ask them to do a little bit more, which may be a little bit beyond them. And the biggest issue I have is there will be a place for Antoine in the team. I just don't know what Pep's going to ask him to do. Hopefully he'll just ask him to play the way he normally plays at Bournemouth and find a place for him. But as he learns Pep's ways, he may be asked to add a few more dimensions to his game, a few more strings to his bow, a few more arrows to his quiver, as it were. And how he adapts from there will determine how he succeeds at Manchester City. But with a club like City, they're always going to be in the hunt for trophies domestically and in Europe. So I think he'll get his chance. And obviously we will be observing how he goes on there. And I'll tell you something right now, Craig, that City team is a team in need of rejuvenation. There are still several players who are there from the treble-winning season, but some of them clearly, are tiring a bit, are almost on their last legs. They've already said goodbye to several of the stars who were there from that team. And it's a team that needs to, regenerate and adapt like all good teams have to do.
To be honest, I agree with you completely on Manchester City. They have, an aging team. They've done so well, but there is certain players that are probably coming to the end of their time there, and some have already gone, but they do have a lot of talent, and hopefully Antoine will get his chance there. I wish him the very, very best. I wish he was still here, as I would do, but at the same time, it is what it is. I just hope that if Manchester City find that he falls out of favour with them, and if he ends up having to go on loan to somebody, because it seems to be the case, Manchester City have loaned a lot of players over to Everton. I hope that at that point, if that point ever happens, because it might not, then Antoine, if we're in the position to bring him back on a loan, he comes back here first, that we have first referral. And to be honest, it would make sense as well with that sell-on fee in there as well. If that ever does happen, it's all ifs and buts at this moment in time. I just want to go through some of the comments. Malcolm, I am going to ignore your comment for the moment. I know you hate me bringing up Andoni Iraola and the situation there. I probably will mention it. However, it won't be in the style that's, what a lot of the media are saying. So don't panic. Don't panic. It's not going to happen that way. Hope you've not logged out. Paul from Oz has said, a brilliant player for Bournemouth, always contributed. Yes, 100%. 100%. Absolutely love Antoine Semenyo. I love Andoni Iraola as well. But yeah, absolutely love Antoine Semenyo. Shauna said it would be brilliant seeing him not hold back at all, which was understandable. So be worried, Arsenal. To be honest, I wish he was still here. I really do. I wish he was still here, but yeah, we shall see how he gets on. Do you think Brooks can be the next Semenyo? As he get loads of shots, hit the bar for the most in the league? If he can just finish, then he would get a big move. I want to hold that thought. We'll come back to that one as well. I need to start starring these messages, which is something that is possible. So anything that I'm skipping, I'm starring. It's something on StreamYard. So it means something to me. Must have been a great game to watch, to be there live and experience the atmosphere, especially at the end. What a night for you. What a memory. Unfortunately, it was at the other end. It was at the north stand end of Dean Court when Antoine scored that goal. I would have loved it to have been at our end, but it is what it is. But yeah, what a fantastic strike. We did get the pleasure of seeing Krupi celebrating, though, as well as Evan Nilsson's goal in the first half. So there is small blessings, but at the same time, what a end to the game at the end of the game. Also, Manny, I did see Van der Ven diving, as you probably saw on TV.
Yeah, I saw the highlights, and obviously, obviously, oh, Mickey, that was fine. That was fine. It nearly blew the minds of many neutral fans, but
he did
sadly, he couldn't get the goal. And, Mickey van der Ven obviously is a player right now who is, I have to say, too good for Tottenham in this current climate. And he's definitely a player who will be in demand by big clubs, if not in now, then definitely in the summer. I think he might stay at Spurs, but depending on how things go over there, we might see a lot of changes. And of course, one other former Cherry, Dominic Solanke, could also be on the move. And I think the poor chap's injury problems have just caught up with him at the worst possible time.
Never had an injury here. Or if he did, it was only a minor thing. It was very, very, very odd. But, that he's gone there and got, a terrible injury, to be fair. So hopefully he'll come back. But yeah, Mickey van der Ven, you should have, Matt will tell you, I was absolutely livid when the referee points to the spot. And of course, I could see it there. It was as clear as day to me. It was right in front of me. Luckily, the referee went to the screen and made the right decision in the end. Maybe there is a point behind VAR. There we are. Never thought I'd say that. Can anyone believe who we are selling players to? Real Madrid, Liverpool, PSG, Tottenham. Also, current 5th place Brentford. Well, not too worried about Brentford, but yes, the teams that we're selling players to, Never in a million years would we have ever thought of that, back in the League Two days. It was always players going on loan to Weymouth or, managing to bring a player in from Crawley Town. Fletch, Super Fletch, coming back from Crawley. That's where I refer to that. We will get Europe, so Andoni will say no worries. Well, I hope you're right, Sean. And last but not least, for the moment, Badger Bournemouth fan has said, just joined, are we in on any central defenders? I haven't heard any, but we'll cover that in a moment. And we can certainly discuss, because I think it's a very good point of contention for me, actually, that. But yeah, we will discuss that in a bit. But I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to do things in a slightly different order, because, of course, we've talked about this man already with regards to being the replacement for Antoine Semenyo. There is, of course, one player that's left. Other player that's left Dean Court, one player that has come in. But let's just quickly discuss Antoine's possible replacement, which is Ethan Nwaneri. Now, if anybody watched my interview with Marty from AFTV, he actually told us a little bit about Ethan Nwaneri. And Manny can probably do the same in a second as well. It is linked in the media as a loan move. But if you remember back to that video, Marty was saying that he understands from his sources, and Arsenal Fan TV, of course, have got good sources with Arsenal, that it could well be permanent, which would be perfect for us. Manny, take it away. What do you think of Ethan?
Wonderful talent, another Hale End kid, and someone who obviously was given his chance under Arteta. Now, a reason why a large number of people are sort of angry with the way things have progressed with Ethan with us is that there's this idea that Arteta really only gave him his chance at that tender age so that he could break the record that was set by Harvey Elliott, who was with Fulham at the time. And of course, he has since gone on to achieve great things with Liverpool and also earn laurels for England at youth level. But sadly, things have not worked out with him, the loan move to Aston Villa, and it could very well be that he might get sent back to Liverpool to play, and he could very well end up playing a role with them. Personally, there's a part of me that thinks that with doubts over Emiliano Buendia, Harvey Elliott might still possibly get some future with Aston Villa. It could very well be that after the January window, if Villa don't spend any more money, Elliott comes into the team, plays a few games, and if Villa end up winning something really grand, maybe Elliott might end up staying and actually progressing a bit further. It's just sad how things have progressed with Harvey. But since being given his debut that season, Nwaneri never really got too many first-team minutes after that. But the season afterwards, he was featured a lot more, and he was seen as a person who could sort of come in and lend a little bit of freshness, some pace, and some bite to the team, especially in the right-wing position as cover for Bukayo Saka. And we still worry about whether or not Bukayo, for all his talent, can really last the whole season because, he's still a massive injury doubt. We did buy Noni Madueke from Chelsea to sort of strengthen that position. But sadly, it just means that Nwaneri hasn't really been able to get any opportunities in the first team, any substantial opportunities. I think he might have played in the League Cup, maybe a few minutes. It's just a mark of the competition for places and how the squad is so stacked right now that Ethan can't get any minutes. And so if it does come to pass that the deal becomes permanent, then it will benefit all parties, especially since Saka has recently, I think today, in fact, signed a new long-term contract, although I think, if anything, that will just increase the release clause for him. And it could very well be that some club might decide to really just be willing to part with a huge sum of money for him. But if you do get Ethan Nwaneri permanently, what I think might happen is that he might join you lot on loan until the end of the season. And depending on how things go, it could definitely become a permanent transfer then. And what I will say right now is, especially with Bournemouth travelling to Arsenal later on this season, if he does join, obviously he will be ineligible given that he's on loan with you from his parent club. But he could definitely play a role with you, especially as a potential replacement for Antoine Semenyo. And I think there was a gentleman in the chat who said that even David Brooks might get some more minutes this season. Someone like him could really step up and do a good job as well. And I'm really happy to see Brooks going from strength to strength, given how he's recovered from cancer as well. It's amazing to see him there. So maybe it was the right time to part with Semenyo, although preferably I would have loved to have seen him go at the end of the season if it had to come to pass. But Ethan will not be a bad replacement by any means. And I'm sure Andoni will definitely find a place for him in the squad, will blood him in very well. And with the FA Cup also starting, especially with you lot going to Newcastle, I think tomorrow, yes?
Yes, we are. Yep.
So sadly, I don't know if the deal will be done in time for Ethan to be a part of that squad. But he could, if it's done quickly enough, be in the squad for the next Premier League match day. So if you can get this done, this loan deal sorted, get it done as quickly as possible. And I think he will add a dimension to the Cherries, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. And he is a player that I really, really do like when I have seen him playing for Arsenal. He is in a squad, though, again, like I say, with Manchester City, Arsenal, again, have an abundance of talent. This is why Erebeshi Eze, a player that I really, really like, he's struggling to get in the side, even though he did score a hat-trick against Thomas Frank's Tottenham. I love saying that myself. I can't stand Thomas Frank, as you know. But, Ethan Nwaneri, considering the players that are ahead of him as well, Bukayo Saka, he's without a shadow of a doubt, the best winger in football at the moment, in my honest opinion. And unless Bukayo ends up being signed by somebody, and there's only really, to be honest, Arsenal is such a big club, of course, top of the Premier League at the moment. I know you're probably going to curse me for saying and keep saying that, but there's only really a couple of clubs that really he's going to go to. Probably one, and that would be Real Madrid. If they come calling, then who knows? But yeah, I think Bukayo, it's not a place, because Bukayo is so good and so influential at Arsenal. It's very, very unlikely he is going to leave unless that big club comes calling, isn't it, Manny?
Yeah, that should in all likelihood be the case. But what I will say to that is stranger things happen. And it should also be mentioned that his injury record isn't really the best. And there's always going to be a huge doubt as to whether or not he will be really 100% fit on a consistent basis season after season, the way things have been going at Arsenal. And my biggest fear is that he will end up, getting burnt out. So there might be some reasons why he signed that long-term deal. And, given that we parted with a great deal of dosh to get Madueke in as cover, I don't know how long that deal is going to last for. It could very well be for, 2 or even 3 seasons, and then Noni ends up moving on. So it does seem clear that Arteta wants to build his long-term strategy around Bukayo, but we're going to have to see in the coming seasons what will happen, because certain circumstances will, change things indubitably.
Yeah, most definitely. And to be honest, Ethan Nwaneri wants to play games, so this is probably a very, very good move for him. He will probably be a regular starter for ourselves. So hopefully we will be welcoming Ethan in very, very shortly. So there we go. That is Antoine Semenyo and his possible replacement. So there we are. The Cherries are said to be in the transfer market for a winger, a midfielder, and a central defender as well. So there we are. I'm just going to go on to a player that has actually left the club on loan now. So we're going to move away from Semenyo and his replacement. I know that there's still some comments coming in about that. Good night to Malcolm as well. And he's going to say he'll catch up the rest tomorrow. Yeah, most definitely. Let us know what you think in the comments tomorrow evening or morning, whenever you watch it. But Julian Arejo has completed his loan deal to Celtic. Does the manager change affect this deal as well? And will he get the game time? Now, I'll just give my honest opinion with regards to Julian Arejo because he is somebody I met. Believe it or not, he speaks quite good English. He's kind of American. He's got like an American. I think he spent a lot of time in America actually, although he plays for the Mexican national team. But Julian Rejo, in all honesty, showed some real naivety a little while back against Brentford in the Carabao Cup. As you probably remember, he made a silly move where he kind of stepped over the ball and caught the player, effectively stamping down on the player. That has been really his last moments in a Cherry shirt for now, not possibly forever, but for now it is. And he's gone to Celtic to try and rejuvenate his career. But he's a player that shows a lot of promise, a lot of pace, but probably a bit of naivety at the back. And Manny, have you watched much of Arejo? And is it a case that this man, he does play or he come in as a right back, but maybe because of his pace, he's not best positioned there. I would say his defending is poor, but his pace and his, attacking prowess is quite good. What do you make of him?
I'll be honest with you. When it comes to this chap Araujo, there have been some parts of him that I do kind of like, but as you've mentioned, sometimes his defensive naivety it sort of lets him down. And the reason why he's got some American in him is because he is actually an American, born and brought up in California.
Oh, there we are.
But so he obviously had the he had eligibility to play for both the US and Mexico, and was actually capped by the US in the friendly. But because he didn't play in a competitive game, he was still able to, make the switch to play for Mexico if he wanted. And obviously, with his Mexican ancestry, he was able to do that. And he's been capped by El Tri 16 times since. And obviously, he should be a big part of their World Cup plans. Now, I think when he signed for Celtic on loan, Wilfred Nancy was still the manager, if memory serves me right. And obviously, Nancy, having had his ear to the ground with football on the other side of the Atlantic, would have seen Araujo play and would have decided, maybe this could be the type of person I would like to see play for Celtic. And when you take a look, obviously, at the Celtic squad and where he could, fit in, the usual right back there is another one from the Americas, but it's Alistair Johnston, the Canadian international. And I think he's injured right now. So if Araujo comes in, he probably will look to play. He will possibly play it right back. And mind you, many of the fullbacks over the years, Craig, who have been lauded for their attacking prowess, but who haven't exactly lit up the world in terms of their defensive abilities. But defensive ability is something you can sort of learn as you go. And now that Martin O'Neill is back at Celtic, he never should have been shunted aside for Nancy, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think O'Neill will definitely look to try and get the best out of him and try and blood him in. But he will obviously need to work really hard, because Celtic right now are not really in a good place, as you can see. It's bad enough that they lost the League Cup final to St. Mirren when Nancy was in charge. But what's even worse is that derby defeat to Rangers pretty much cost Nancy his job. And he was dismissed pretty much immediately after that. And I've got a friend of mine, obviously, who I know from my time in America when I was studying there, but he's obviously Scottish, huge Celtic fan. The Irish heritage definitely plays a role there. And what his issue was that that Nancy never should have been hired. And Celtic are going through a bit of a crisis now. The whole Rodgers issue and how O'Neill was brought in steadied the ship, and then suddenly shunted aside for Nancy.
Yeah.
I think the decision making from the Celtic board has not been the best. And I actually do have the lineup from the Celtic Rangers game. Araujo didn't even see any minutes. I mean, he came on as a 68th minute substitute for the left wing back, ironically, McCowan. I don't quite know how well he was able to do. And by the time he came on, Rangers were already 2-1 up. And then a goal from Spurs loanee Mikey Moore pretty much put an end to proceedings. So Araujo has a lot of work to do to try to get himself up to speed. And obviously, O'Neill will be looking at him very closely. But the way things are going with Celtic at the moment, they're going to need a lot of help, all the help they can get, because they're well behind Heart of Midlothian in the Scottish title race. And although there is, of course, technically a great deal of time to turn things around, and even Hearts could also have a bit of a blip in form, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Chelsea. It could very well be that Araujo will rise to the occasion. I think if O'Neill decides to use the 3-4-2-1 formation that Nancy would like to use, he probably would play Araujo as more of a right wing back, so that his pace could be used to good effect. But I think there will be a role for Araujo in the team, and I think he will get game time. And I think O'Neill is a shrewder, fairer, more compassionate and understanding manager. And he never ever should have been shunted aside. And what Celtic did was just criminal. But
yeah,
I think Araujo will get his chance at Celtic. I think he will do quite well. And it could very well be that Celtic might decide to get him on a permanent deal, which could very well suit him immensely.
Yeah, I agree with you on Martin O'Neill. Should never have been removed. I feel a bit sorry for Wilfred Nancy as well, because, of course, if you look at his record, it's not actually that bad. It's not actually that bad until he comes to Celtic. So maybe he's been thrown in at the deep end, especially when there's a bit of transition. But Martin O'Neill, steady head, knows the league already. Nancy didn't. It's always going to be a little bit difficult, especially a big club like Celtic. It needs somebody who knows Scottish football. It seems like Scottish football, in all honesty, it's one of those leagues that managers have to know to get the best, especially at Celtic and Rangers, because the pressure is so high. Just going to quickly go into the comments as well. Shauna said, Julian showed potential to me, but too much competition. He needs to get his confidence back up, and then you never know in the summer. I do agree with that. There was potential, there was glimmers, there was naivety, though, of course, in that Brentford game, like I say. And plenty of players have been poor, gone on loan and come back a different player. And most definitely, that has happened in the past. So we shall see, and hopefully it will happen with Julian. But we have got another couple of players to go through. Let's go through one that is a done deal, and this is an incoming.
Not that one.
Fraser Forster, there we go.
Yes, that's the one.
Fraser Forster has joined on a short-term deal until the end of the season after injury to backup keeper Will Dennis. Now, Manny, I'm going to give my honest opinion on this. I think this is a great move. I honestly think this is a great move because Jordi Petrovic is struggling a little bit. I feel that he is being beaten too much at the near post. He made a very, very good save against Spurs, tipping it over. I think it was Richarlison that got his head on that. And,
I think it was actually Romero who did. I saw the highlights,
Romero, wasn't it? Yes.
And
right.
That was a fine save, definitely.
But there has been question marks, and I think he needs to get his confidence back. He needs to work with Neil Moss, and I think this man will probably play against Newcastle tomorrow. Fraser Forster, he's a goalkeeper that's been around the houses. In fact, funny enough, he started his career at Newcastle, I believe, and then of course, will be going back there probably to play his first game. So I like the man. I think he is dependable. He's not going to set the world alight. He's not going to be the next big thing. He's had most of his career, and I think this is sensible. Plus, how genuine is it that Will Dennis was pushing Jordi Petrovic for that number one spot? Jordi Petrovic needs somebody to push him, to actually, challenge him for that jersey. And Fraser Forster can do that. I shan't say where Fraser Forster has got the most of his appearances between the sticks, because you probably all know where he got his most appearances. But he's a very, very, very good goalkeeper. I think he won his place. Was it Alex McCarthy? He dispositioned, didn't he? At Southampton, and then he's had quite a good career with them. But he will do a job for us.
Yeah, I've actually got his Wikipedia page open right now. I know Wikipedia is not the best source, but I don't want to be someone who, BS's people. And if memory serves me right, obviously when he signed for Southampton, it was in 2014. And it could very well have been, it was actually Kelvin Davis back in the day who, was the number one then. And after he left Southampton, I think Arthur Boruc also came in. Period of time. The same Arthur Boruc, who also went on to play for Bournemouth. You'll remember him very fondly too, I know. Yes. And the thing about Fraser Forster is that when he started his career and really coming into his own, he was tipped to be one of the up-and-coming stars when it came to goalkeeping. And of course, he found a place in England's World Cup squad as a backup to Joe Hart along with Ben Foster. But when England's elimination was confirmed, it was Foster who was given the nod to play against Costa Rica and kept a clean sheet, while Forster ended up twiddling his thumbs on the sidelines. And the sad part was that even when he was out of the team, what disappointed me personally was that he never really showed too much of an inclination to really, work hard to try and get back in. I think he got a bit too comfortable, and he just had to do something. And he actually, mind you, made most of his appearances with Celtic in not one, not even two, but three loan spells away from. Two of them, of course, were while he was at Newcastle United. The other one, of course, was when he was contracted to the club, which you don't want to name. And, of course, it doesn't make me happy to say this, but he was also a key part of Spurs' Europa League triumph, along with Dominic Solanke and the likes of Brennan Johnson and others, playing in a few group games. But obviously, due to some ridiculous circumstances, he couldn't be named in the squad for the knockout stages. And even now, Craig, he strikes me as someone who is more like a Darren Randolph sort of player, someone who has a lot of experience, someone who, is willing to provide competition. What disappointed me about Randolph is that for all of his exploits and experience, he was, of course, for a period of time, the Republic of Ireland's number one goalkeeper, played for them at Euro 2016. He didn't seem to mind in many ways being so far down the pecking order, and he was just happy to just come in, do his bit, contribute to the squad. But I don't think he ever featured in the matchday squad for either the Cherries, and even his time at West Ham was also limited in many respects. But with Forster, I think you've got a person who is willing to compete, who believes that even though the best years of his career might be gone, he still has something to contribute. And he's 37 years old. Many goalkeepers have been known to play until they're 40. So he's not going to be one to just, happy to sit in the reserves of the big club, at least not now, and drive around in a fancy car and live the life of Riley. No, I think he's going to want to really compete and make the most of the remaining years that he has left. And he can look back with some satisfaction at the way his career has gone, although I think he will also know deep down that he could have and should have really accomplished a lot more, especially during the period when he was, in the England reckoning. He could have been one of those goalkeepers who consistently challenged Joe Hart a great deal more. But sadly, things didn't turn out that way. But in terms of having an experienced goalkeeper, an experienced backup goalkeeper, he's a brilliant signing. I always thought that he was far too good not to be snapped up by another club after leaving Spurs. And now that you've got him, I think he could definitely play a role in your FA Cup campaign. And of course, given that we're talking about the FA Cup, I still feel terrible that your run ended the way it did last year. I'd love to see you lot try and improve on that, but we'll see how things go. And it's not going to be quite the same without a certain player as a part of your squad, but maybe a few new additions, Forster, possibly in Nwaneri, could help you go a bit further.
Well, I'm hoping so. That's one dream, and I'm gutted actually. That's one game I think back to, and I know it's Manchester City that we were playing, but we were, for large spells of that game, we were the better side. And had we got through, I think a day out in the final with Crystal Palace, then what an achievement for both clubs that would have been, and what a game that would have been, and how exciting would that have been for the neutral. And I think what's nice about Palace winning, and I said this the other day, Palace winning the FA Cup has brought back a little bit of it's brought a bit more spirit back, rather than Manchester City or Manchester United winning it year on year. Actually Crystal Palace winning it, somebody who was largely unfancied. I think that's the pleasure of the FA Cup. That is the journey of the FA Cup. It's like when Wimbledon won it in 1988. That's what the FA Cup's all about. So I think we'll see Fraser Forster this weekend up at Newcastle, a club, of course, that he has played for before. But there we are. That's Fraser Forster. Like I say, 6-month deal. I think it makes sense. Who knows? He might, if he does well, maybe even wins the number 1 jersey away from Jordi Petrovic. An extension might be on the cards. If he doesn't get many minutes, he might end up leaving AFC Bournemouth, going somewhere else. No doubt somebody else will have Fraser Forster on their mind. He might win their number 1 jersey, or might go in as number 1 at that club. Maybe he might take a drop down. And it's always to be seen. Of course, we've got Alex Paulson, who's on loan in New Zealand. We've got Will Dennis to come back. We've got lots of quality, in that goalkeeping department with the youngsters. And part of me, this is me thinking out loud here. Part of me thinks that when Aaron Ramsdale's contract ends at Newcastle, of course, he's on loan there at the moment from Southampton. I would not be surprised if we went in for him. I would not be surprised if Rambo comes back. But that's a story for another day, and it won't be in this transfer window. But I tell you what, let's talk about a player that has been linked in the media, and supposedly a bid has gone in. And this is Jamie Leveling. Manny, you had to correct me because I was saying Llewellyn at first, but in German a W is a V, isn't it?
Yes.
And we're going back in with another bid. Supposedly we have been rejected. Semenyo's long-term replacement, is he? We are willing to pay up to 40 million euros for the winger, but VFB boss Walmuth, I think I've said that, and Sebastian Hoeneß have rejected the proposal. He is highly thought of. His figures look good. Again, he's a youngster. He's 24 years of age, so not as young as Nwaneri. But his statistics look good, and of course he's had a couple of games in the national side as well.
Yep. I've got his profile open right now. He's actually played 4 times for Germany, and he scored once. And it was actually against the Netherlands. I think he scored that goal in a 1-0 win. So he's also another one who could very well be potentially on the move. The only problem is, if you take a look at how Stuttgart are doing right now, we'll take a look at their current season. Where they are in the table, if we take a look where they are actually in 6th place. So they are at a stage right now, Craig, where they are competing seriously for high honours, and the prospect of losing him would almost dent their challenge in a way, which is why Hoeneß and Werle are not really keen on letting him go. They're currently sixth right now, level on points with Eintracht Frankfurt, who drew against Dortmund yesterday, 3-3. What a humdinger that was. Actually, it took place today. I stand corrected. They just drew today. And they're only a point behind Hoffenheim in fifth and 3 points behind Leipzig in fourth. And fourth also gets you into the Champions League. So I don't believe there's any way Stuttgart would be interested in letting a real talent like him go, especially not in January. And obviously, you take a look at the squad they have right now. I'm just trying to take a look at the statistics, the appearances that they've made, and where exactly is leveling in the scheme of things. Yes, he's made 23 appearances this season, scored 4 times in the Bundesliga. Not in the Bundesliga. That's overall. He's played 13 times in the Bundesliga. He scored once, made some appearances in the German Cup, obviously. Also played in the Super Cup and scored once there. And he's also scored quite a few goals for them in the Europa League. So he's an important player for them right now. And they're also ninth in the Europa League table. And they want to try to get into the round of 16, at least by finishing in the top 8.
Yeah.
So you can see how important he is to them. And they're not going to want to let him go that easily. That's another reason why. It could very well be maybe at the end of the season, if the Nwaneri deal doesn't quite work out, and if the loan doesn't become permanent, then you can definitely make a move for Llewellyn, although it could very well be that he might want to stay at Stuttgart, especially if they secure Champions League qualification. But I think the only way you could possibly get him right now is if you pay more than 40 million. And I'm not sure you will necessarily be in a position to do that. So it could very well be that you might have to shelve this until the summer. So,
well, it depends at that point
yeah,
what Stuttgart do, really, because just looking at the German league, and I tell you what, I'm surprised I haven't taken more of an interest in this, because it looks really, really good. It looks really exciting. Stuttgart, are, of course, only 3 points behind Bayer Leverkusen, of course, won the league a couple of years back.
Yes.
Only 3 points behind them. They're in third. And they've actually got a game in hand on Borussia Dortmund,
Yes.
which means they could be 4 points behind second. Bayern Munich are some way ahead. Forget about that. It seems like Harry Kane is going to win his second trophy of his career, but which could be good for England. Still, Spurs have only won one in the past couple of years, but or the last however long it was. But yeah, I know you'll probably like me saying that as well, Manny. But I see what this. I think this is probably unlikely based on what you've said, and I think Stuttgart are probably going to stand their ground, but it depends how much we want this player. Are we going to go over the odds? It's a big risk. We've seen it come off. I think Evan Nilsson, even though some people might think that his figure was too much, I think it's the going price. I think it was a good price in the end, actually, for what he brings to the team. Not only in goals. So maybe leveling might be the same. So we shall see. I'm just going to quickly go back into the comments as well. And it sounds like it's a very, very, very good game. And this is why Chris has disappeared, because it's 3-3, 107 minutes, Wrexham versus Forest. So
yeah.
I'm hoping because the Forest fans don't like me very much after I went on one of their shows and said they was going to get relegated. I don't think you are, to be honest. I think that's just me bantering with them. But I quite like to see the Welsh club get through. And actually, you know what? It'd be quite nice to play them a date with Hollywood. But I tell you what, underestimate them at your laurel.
I think you mean peril. If
Peril,
that's
that's
the
it.
word you're
Laurel.
looking.
What's laurel? I don't know. Peril. The grasp of the English language there from me on great English. Let's go.
It happens to everyone. It just goes to show not all Brits will necessarily have the best command or Downton Abbey style grammar. It happens to everyone. Don't worry about it, mate. You had the gist right. I will compliment you. But it is what it is. And of course, the Wrexham goalkeeper is none other than Arthur Conquo, who was on the books at Arsenal for a few years. But
I like him.
Recently, he's been making a few mistakes. And of course, as I speak, Forest do have a corner. So it could very well be that this might decide the course of the game. If it's level right now, if it stays level, they go to penalties.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, Wrexham do go through. Sorry, Forest fans. But I tell you what, let's touch on the last player that we're going to cover. And then we'll just go through some of the last comments as well that was done earlier on. And that is Callum Wilson. The former Cherries star is set to leave West Ham after 5 months. I knew he shouldn't have gone there. He don't like East London, yeah, he wants to go to West Ham. But after 4 goals and 1 assist in 17 appearances, struggling West Ham move former England star on. And he's been linked to Celtic, Leicester, and Coventry. Now, I think I know where he's going to go. If Chris is in the room, I'm sure Chris might be thinking this is a great movie. Maybe he might not be, but are you surprised how he struggled to kind of settle in at West Ham? Because it was a weird move in the first place for me, because he's never really been liked there. And I think they kind of warmed to him a little bit. But
if memory serves me right, when he signed for the club, Graham Potter was still the manager. Yeah. And this is yet another example, sadly, Craig, of a new manager coming in and decide that certain players, their faces just won't fit with him. And he does this almost everywhere he goes. At Spurs, he told Joe Hart he wasn't a part of his plans, but wasn't going to let him go for free. And thankfully, he went to Celtic and proved him wrong. And Nuno has a tendency of, being very harsh in his judgment on certain players, because I remember seeing Wilson play, and I think he did score. And there was a part of me that thought that he could be the answer for West Ham in terms of their striker issues. But, obviously leaving a club like Newcastle, and ironically, of course, they had also sold Alexander Isak to Liverpool. I just wonder if maybe Newcastle believed it was the right time to sort of let him leave, but maybe Wilson thought that he could, still offer a Premiership club something, and West Ham was the opportunity he would want to take. Maybe he didn't expect that the club would go into such flux. And I think the thing with Nuno as well is that he also has been very harsh in his judgment on not just Callum Wilson, but another player, James Ward-Prowse. And I've just read that in the last few hours, he's pretty much said that Ward-Prowse's future may lie away from West Ham. And the way West Ham are right now, Craig, they're a club in all sorts of trouble. That defeat they suffered against Forest with a last-minute penalty from Morgan Gibbs-White, in the eyes of many fans, has sort of sealed their fate in a way. Because as terrible as Forest are under Dyche, and I will say it right now, any Forest fans are asking, they're even worse under Dyche than they were under Ange. And I know you think it's a big call. I know a lot of people are going to say, no, but Dyche came in and helped us win a few games and we're all happy as clams and we're also doing well in Europe. Since then, what exactly have Forest done in the league? I think they've lost about 4 straight. And some of the games they've played, they haven't played it all well. But West Ham are just, a club in absolute disarray. And just when you, the sad part about their loss to Forest is that just when you thought that hope was coming in, especially when Somerville scored that second goal was eventually disallowed, and then I think it was Dominguez who equalised. They're just a club right now which is not very well run, where there's a lot of problems from top to bottom. And the sad part about West Ham is that they seem to go through these issues on a fairly frequent basis every few years. So it's just saddening. And I think Callum's future will definitely lie away from West Ham. It could very well be that he goes to Leicester City. I don't see Celtic necessarily wanting to sign him unless, he wouldn't mind joining Araujo up there. Coventry City also currently doing quite well in the Championship under Frank Lampard. Maybe they think he has something to prove. The thing about Callum, though, Craig, is that I don't think he necessarily can cut it at the highest level. But when it comes to dropping down a level to the Championship or joining another league, that is where you could see him, joining a better environment where he could very well be brought back to something like his best. And he did in fact start his career at Coventry City, so that could always be an option. And definitely his great stints with the Cherries and with the Magpies won't be forgotten all too easily. He's 33, so you'd like to think that maybe he has at least 1 or 2 decent years in him, but maybe Premiership football might not be for him. Now, if he can join either Leicester or Coventry and help them get promoted and play a big role in that, it could very well be that he might have one final chance to shine in the Premiership, maybe with, a much happier environment. But again, we're always seeing this issue with certain promoted teams coming up and not being able to quite hack it, and they end up, struggling. We're seeing that with Burnley this season, although you have to give Sunderland and Leeds credit for doing as well as they're doing. But it's quite clear that Callum needs to move on. James Ward-Prowse could also be a potential option for you if you would like to consider another replacement for Semenyo. Maybe you could look at him. He definitely is a person I've always liked.
I do like him, but I don't know. To be honest, this is an interesting comment. Sean has put, I would love Callum back, and I think he would be useful for us, but it would depend on the wage. I think that maybe he is past his prime, and I think it's time for his career to do the full circle. And I don't think he will dislodge Evan Nilsson, Krupi, and Enesu now at the moment, at this stage of his career. I think it's time for his career to do the full circle and go back to Coventry, help them to get back into the Premier League. I could see that being the story, to be honest. I can't see him going to Leicester. Leicester, again, are a club who are, Chris will say this, are in a bit of a mess. They probably, and Callum Wilson probably would be a starter with them, if he was to go there. With Celtic, maybe Martin O'Neill has got his ideas and would bring him in, but I can see him going to Coventry, and I think he would go there. But yeah, I personally think Coventry is his destination, but I'm not surprised him leaving West Ham, Manny. After all, it is a club in free fall. It is a club at the moment, of course, the Brady and Sullivan. Of course, Sullivan made his money in not so normal industries. Let's just leave it as that. Are vilified at West Ham, and I can't see a way out of it for them. Actually, I can't see I don't think they're very good, and I think Jared Bowen is getting frustrated. Somerville shows loads of promise, and doesn't. That could be a player that we could bring in. I would bring in Crescencio Somerville. He's a player that I wanted us to sign
definitely.
I wanted us to sign him from Leeds, and if West Ham are in free fall and he's not in Nuno's long-term plans, hey, I'd bring him in here. So there we are. That's my thought. I just want to quickly, Manny, just go over some of these comments as well. I'm going to leave the most obvious ones at the end, but let's go to. Do you think Wrexham will get promoted, Manny?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Obviously, when you take a look at how they've risen rapidly with Phil Parkinson managing them, and how they've been, in many ways a breath of fresh air, you'd like to think they would. They do seem to have a pretty good blend of youth and experience, and I certainly would think that they could possibly cause some problems. As things stand right now, they're 9th in the championship, but only 4 points away from 3rd place. So if they get back on a decent run of form, there's no reason why they can't be in the mix. Obviously, Coventry City, as we speak, we just spoke, they're 6 points ahead of Middlesbrough right now. Very healthy lead. And if Wilson were to come back in, wherever Callum Winslow will go, I'm just going back to him, I think he might be willing to agree to a role of a backup striker who could come on and just score a few and then maybe start in some of the cup games if Coventry are still playing. So he could also join in, can do a job for them. But, with Wrexham obviously now coming back to them, they had a bit of an iffy period and they've already lost 6 games and drawn 10. And of course, there was another huge controversy with their captain, the ex-Republic of Ireland international James McLean.
Yeah.
But, there's no reason why they can't get promoted if they just get back to the form that they showed in games gone by. And I think they are. I think if you take a look at them, the form they're in right now, they were sort of they were having a run of wins, but then had a draw and a loss in between. I think there's no reason why they can't get promoted. I don't see them winning the division or getting automatically promoted like the top 2, but there's no reason why they can't make the playoffs. But they are going to have to make sure they sort things out as we speak. And I also want to make sure I get to the scores and fixtures. As we speak right now, it's 2-2 on penalties. We'll find out, obviously, from the live reporting how they do. It's difficult for me to keep track of that. But Wrexham, I think, do have a chance of getting into the playoffs. If they can make 2nd place, then that could be a bonus. But we'll have to see.
It's not beyond them. I think Coventry have run away with it. 52 points. They're looking very, very good. But, from Middlesbrough, 46, Ipswich, 44, Preston, 43, Millwall, 43, Watford, 41, all the way down to Leicester, who have got 37 points in 12. To be honest, any mix of those teams could be in there. I thought Bristol City would be one of the teams really to watch this season. They've dropped off a little bit recently. I've actually got my own predictions, and actually they're a little bit sideways. Who I think might get out of that division, because the Championship's a great league. It's a great, great league, and the teams that have gone down, okay, Ipswich have done all right. But not the rest of them haven't really. Southampton are languishing down in 15th spot. It's an interesting division. I'm going to say what I think. So Coventry, I think will win it. But my wild card from watching the Championship, watching it the other day. In 2nd place, I'm going to go for Millwall. I'm going to go for Millwall. And the reason being is they've got a right mix of both young talent, like Femi Aziz, for example, who's, looks quite a prolific striker. Players, they've got a mix of both young heads and old heads. And I think it might just click. They've got quite close to
this just in. We were talking about Wrexham. They've just beaten Nottingham Forest on penalties.
There we are. Well, that's going to make them a bit more buoyant as well. So there we are. Maybe Wrexham will get promoted. But yeah, I'm going to go for Millwall 2nd. And hey, just to please you, Sean, I'm going to say Wrexham 3rd through the playoffs, which I'm sure would please their fans. And that would be 3 promotions in a row, wouldn't it? Hang on. Promoted from National League to League 2, then League 2 to League 1. That's 2. League 1. No, it would be 4. Wow, that would be an incredible story, but
how wonderful it would be. I think they'd be the 2nd Welsh club to qualify. The 3rd, actually. I should mention Cardiff City and Swansea have played in the top division before. Swansea of course, back in the day were League Cup winners under the stewardship of a certain Laudrup, if memory serves me right. Michael, I think it was.
Yes.
And it would be wonderful to see Wrexham in the league. And, the joke is, of course, that Ryan Reynolds wanted a Hollywood ending, and he's got exactly that. So, that is obviously something to look forward to. And, of course, you're talking about Millwall as a possible, wild card. And, as you've mentioned, I think they do. You mentioned Aziz, I think his name is, number 11.
Yes, yeah, he's done very, very well.
And, of course, it was a late goal from Taylor, their central defender, which helped them beat Swansea 2-1 in the second minute of stoppage time. So, you know what? There is no reason why Millwall can't do very well. But obviously, when we talk about last season's FA Cup campaign, there was an absolutely ugly incident involving the Millwall goalkeeper and Jean-Philippe Mateta of Crystal Palace, where, it was an ugly collision which sort of brought back memories of Schumacher and Batterston in the World Cup back in the day. And it is fair to say that Millwall aren't a club that's very well liked by a large number of the, the English fan base, especially not around London. And of course, I do seem to remember back in the day, I think it was in 2004, if memory serves me right, they reached the FA Cup final, and Dennis Wise, player-manager, was starting at Wembley that day. But, United ended up swamping them, I think, to the tune of 4-0, and the rest is history. And I seem to remember that because that was the season where, Arsenal went unbeaten, but United beat us en route to winning the FA Cup. So Millwall could make it happen. It could very well be that they are the other team that gets promoted via the playoffs. But I'd like to see Wrexham, really continue to do as well as they can. Ipswich coming back would also be quite good. And maybe if, Kieran McKenna is still in charge of Ipswich, he'll get it right the second time. But... we're going to have to see. And you're absolutely right. The Championship is a wonderful league. And it was, of course, my ex-Arsenal goalkeeper, Okonkwo, who saved another spot kick from Hutchison, which secured the win. So I'm going to have to watch all of the highlights. But, it's sad that the Championship doesn't really get that much coverage, much TV coverage outside the UK. And where I am right now, I can't see it. So I have to depend on video highlights from YouTube, obviously. But, you're absolutely right. It is a good league, and the Championship playoff final is definitely an exciting game. All the drama for which you could ask. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that race shapes up over the coming months. But, looking forward to it, mate.
Well, they do a lot of the Championship games as well as League One and League Two on the red button as well now. So there we are. If you do want to watch Millwall in action, that's the way you can do it. They are a very, very, very good side, actually. And funny enough, everybody says about Millwall fans being horrible. In fact, I have not ever met a horrible Millwall fan. One of my best mates from university was an ardent Millwall fan and one of the loveliest guys you could be. So there we go.
I guess I've learned a lesson. You cannot tar everyone with the same brush. But I think maybe if Millwall were to get promoted, maybe if maybe perceptions could change. You just never know. We'll see what happens.
Exactly. Cold Blow Lane, though, is grim. It is grim. I don't know if you've ever been round there, Manny, to Millwall's ground, but it's not pleasant. I'm just going to go on to Sean's comment here. Do you think Brooks can be the next Semenyo as he gets loads of shots, hits the bar the most in the league? If he can just finish, then he would get a big move. I personally don't think he'll leave AFC Bournemouth until a lot later in his career. I think, not that he owes us anything, because he doesn't owe us anything, but I think he has, found his home here. He feels comfortable here. He's been through a lot here. And, I think he wants to stay here long term. That's the general feeling I get from David Brooks. Now, don't get me wrong. If a Manchester City comes in, would David Brooks go to Manchester City? I think anybody within their right mind would be, wants to or should be up for making that move. But David Brooks is 28 years of age. He is coming into the prime of his career. I think he's now or never, but I think he's quite happy here, and he's recently become a dad as well. So, yeah, it was difficult for me to watch him in a Southampton shirt, to be honest, because he's a really, really lovely guy. Has been through hell and back with Hodgkin lymphoma. Thank God he got over that. I think he's here for the long term. I don't see him as the next Semenyo, but I'm just going to skip over that one very quickly because I can't see him going anywhere. We will come to the centre backs because you might have some names for us actually, although I don't think we will go in for a centre back, and I'll tell you in a second. But let's cover this one off. I know, Malcolm, if you are watching on repeat, please, please, please do not turn off the stream now because I'm going to say something you might like. Iriola to Manchester United. And Malcolm said, if you discuss the Andoni situation, I will log out. Don't, Malcolm, because I'm going to discuss it, but I'm going to tell you why I think he will stay. In all honesty. So Andoni Iriola, as we've always said, does not break a contract. He will not leave a club mid-season unless he's sacked. He also waits till the end of the season before signing a new contract. That's how Andoni Iriola works. He honoured his contract with Rayo Vallecano when, or we were obviously interested in him. And of course, Marcelo Bielsa thinks that same way as Andoni Iriola. I think he will firstly assess the state of play, exactly where we are at the moment and what we are doing, transfer wise. Are we keeping the players that he's evolved and built it and merged together? But I think he will stay. I honestly do. I think he will stay because he has got a project. He's got a long-term project. As Malcolm has quite rightly said, and his project ends when he gets into Europe. Now, don't get me wrong, this bad run of form that we've been on up until the Spurs game has probably helped us because Andoni was being talked about a lot more. But I can't see him going to Manchester United. I don't think that's going to happen. Manchester United are not the right club for him. Consider this, you get a lot more time at AFC Bournemouth to turn things around than Manchester United and Old Trafford. If you go into Old Trafford and start off with the start that Andoni Iriola had, you're right in danger and it's a bigger ship to turn around. So, honest opinion, I think he's going to be here for the long term. What do you think, Manny? I nearly called you Malcolm there. It's only because I put that up.
I'll tell you what. I think you said it perfectly that this run that you're in right now has actually come at the best time because now people aren't really speaking about Iriola very much. Manchester United obviously have been in the news ever since the Amorim sacking about the prospect of getting some managers coming in. There is still some talk about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer coming in as a sort of a caretaker manager until the end of the season, and then they go for someone else. Another name which has been bandied around, much to my chagrin, despite not being an Aston Villa fan, is Unai Emery. Now, yes, he managed Arsenal. It didn't quite end as well as any one of us would have liked, but I really liked Emery a great deal, and I am not one of those Arsenal fans who will sneer at him or badmouth him or slander him by saying he wasn't a good manager for us or just not the right fit. He was a good manager for us, but he was always going to struggle replacing Arsene Wenger. And the issues right now at Manchester United, Craig, are so completely entrenched right now. Everything is, laid bare for people to see. And one reason why Aston Villa fans and even Emery himself has made it clear that he doesn't want anything to do with United is because the way he's running the ship right now at Aston Villa, being given the complete trust to do everything his way, and you see how the dividends have been reaped, he's not going to get that at United. And also, when the thing about Amorim is that he did exactly what Maresca did. He pretty much badmouthed the board, and history always tells us that when the manager and the board always get into a scuffle, it's the board that ends up winning, and the manager ends up being given his P45. And history is just repeating itself, really. So why any manager or even any player for that matter would want to go to United in the situation they're in right now, it would beg a belief in many ways. Yes, they may still be a big name, but the underlying problems there would mean that it's just not really worth it. And the same can definitely be said for Spurs, who irresponsibly frittered away the goodwill, in my opinion, earned from winning the Europa League, in which a certain Dominic Solanke did play his part. They sacked their manager, and in hindsight, that was the worst thing they could possibly have done. So, Iraola, when you take a look at the job he did after the start he had, which you mentioned, obviously he was given time to turn things around. He did things his way. And now nobody can even countenance letting him leave. And even you yourself, Craig, who were a huge advocate of Gary O'Neill staying and not, being asked to leave, you've been proved wrong and you've happily admitted that. And it takes a really big person to admit when you've been proved wrong. And I applaud you for that. And hopefully, if there are any people out there who still have the nerve to give you any sort of stick, they need to wind their necks in, let me tell you right now. But what Iraola has built at Bournemouth over these last 18 months has been nothing short of wonderful, and he's made you lot absolutely dream of bigger things. There is always going to be an issue with certain managers at certain clubs. Has this manager taken the club as far as he can possibly take them? And maybe there's a sort of a belief that no, Andoni hasn't. I think it could very well be that he stays until the end of the season for sure. But then, depending on where the Cherries will finish in the league, I think some talks will have to happen. I think, though, having said that, Bill Foley has made it crystal clear that he really does like Iraola, and the fans also love him. He's gotten the respect of his players. He's done, I have to say, quite brilliantly. And last season, of course, I remember when you did the double over us, both of those times, you were, without any doubt, the better team. That cannot be denied. And you were quite unlucky, I have to say, when we played you at Dean Court. You could have, taken points off of us, but you just weren't able to. So it could very well be that Iraola is given until the end of the season, but then there will be some talk about where the club can go from here, because if you aren't able to make Europe via the league position at the very least, then it could be seen as a disappointment, given how well you did last season, only to suddenly fade away. So a lot of questions are going to have to be answered and asked as well. But as far as Iraola going to Manchester United is concerned, I think even he'd be eager to rule that out. And it could very well be that he's had some chats with Emery, and Emery would have told him, don't think about it. The grass is not always greener on the other side. But the biggest hope for, the biggest priority, I would say, is that Bournemouth get out of this run of poor form. And thankfully, by beating Spurs, you can start to get the confidence back, the belief back, and you can start to play the way you were playing when you were winning quite a lot of games and earning quite a lot of points last season. And we're going to see, of course, how these next few months will pan out. And last season, I have to say, you lot really did well, but it was just a shame that you faded away. And of course, there's always the prospect of silverware in the FA Cup, as almost unlikely as it is. So, we'll just have to just let everything take its course this season and then see where you go from here. But I'd be very surprised if Andoni isn't manager next season. I really do like him, and I think he will be given a lot more confidence.
Agree. There we are, Malcolm. Hopefully that is music to your ears as well. And last but not least, this is the one we're going to close off on. Just joined, of course, he joined quite a while back now at 9:23 p.m. So about just over an hour ago. Hope you're still with us, Badger, Bournemouth fan. Just joined. Are we in on for any central defenders? Now, I haven't heard any, but I'll give you my take on this firstly. I don't think that really we need any central defenders because I was very impressed with what James Hill did against Spurs. I think he's very, very dependable. I think, he was good in the air. He had control. He's still learning, he's still growing as a defender. So I think he is going to make that place his own. But then again, Milisakovic is a very, very young central defender who's just come in. And I think, he will only get better and better. And Diakite, he's lost confidence. He was playing very well. He was reading the game and reading the trajectory of the ball so well earlier on in the season. He's lost confidence. That's where it boils down to. So in all honesty, I personally think that we don't need a central defender. But if we do go in for one, Manny, any names in that centre back position you think that we should go for?
You ask an interesting question over here because I've got the Bournemouth squad list up right now, and obviously you've mentioned Hill and Milisakovic and Diakite, among other names, and obviously you've got Senesi and Soler, of course, as another option.
Yes.
I think it all boils down to the business you made at the beginning of the season when you let Huijsen, Zabani, and Kerkez leave. I think, Trafford has done a decent job at a left-back replacing Kerkez, but he's also had a few mistakes creeping into his game. And, of course, Kerkez hasn't exactly set things alight at Liverpool. I can tell you that when he played against Arsenal, Saka had him on toast for the first 20 minutes or so, but then he got some confidence back and ended up, getting the better of Bukayo Saka. But, of course, when Bukayo Saka and Jurrien Timber combined down that right wing, it's just a wonderful, electrifying combination. It's a daunting prospect for any Liverpool left-back. Even Andrew Robertson last season found it difficult to cope with that. I think my issue right now, Craig, is that, having sold all of those defenders, Senesi from Argentina is probably the most experienced defender that you've got in your back four right now. Of course, I know Adam Smith's the club captain, but he doesn't seem to get much game time these days. I think Jimenez has come in and done a pretty good job as well. Senesi's already made about 88 league appearances, and I think he will be making his 100th appearance, I think, if he gets to play against Newcastle in the FA Cup. So it's a back line that's lacking a little bit in terms of experience in a way. I know you say you've got a lot of confidence in James Hill. I know you're talking about possibly, Diakite maybe regaining some confidence, maybe by playing in the FA Cup and then coming back in. But again, there does seem to be a problem, especially if you're continuing to concede goals the way you're conceding them. And, you conceded 2 against Chelsea, 3 against us, 2 against Spurs. And also, I don't want to talk about some of the other games you've had because, it's just not worth it at this point. Defensively, it is still a major problem. And so you will, as was noted, need to get a central defender in. The sad part is, to be brutally honest with you, I don't know if there's anyone I can really think of who would, who could come right in and do a job for you. Certainly none in the Premiership that I know of. I'm going to have to sort of really do a little bit more research and see if I can get something there. But I would say that if there is a vacancy available, and obviously there will be some vacancies there will be some opportunities to sign someone who has some experience, who would like to get some games, at least on loan, if not a permanent transfer. I think you might have to seriously consider that because defensively, it's one of those areas where you really will need to improve, especially if you want to improve that form you're in and get some points back.
And we'll have to do it in the summer anyway, because Senesi does actually want to leave the club. He's not signed a new contract. So I can imagine, he'll leave in the summer and then we'll have to replace him then. So it's a position for, with question marks, but I think Senesi picks himself and then it's one of the others. And I think James Hill will make it his, but I do get where you're coming from. We are a little bit leaky. We weren't at first, during the good run, but we certainly are now. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we can find the right player. But Manny, I think we've been on almost 2 hours. It's always a pleasure to have you on here. You're going to come back for the next one, mate?
Anytime you call me, just let me know and I will definitely join you. If I can't, I will certainly have a good reason, but I will always at least find a way to sort of come back. And I must say that I'm sorry, because I don't think either you or the chat intended for this to go on for almost 2 hours. I was thinking that maybe
Manny,
it would be
great. It's great. I absolutely love it for, 2 hours of great football conversation. And, we've covered so much. I did think you was going to break into a song. I can't remember who sang it. Just give me a call and I will be there. I thought that was what you're going to use. But I'm trying to think of who sang that. Was that a Michael Jackson song? When he was in the Jackson 5, I think it might have been, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been. It was. You're right. It was. But I wasn't really going to do that. And given that it's live, I'm not too sure that the chat members would have appreciated me breaking out into song like that. But as I've said, mate, anytime you call me, I'll be happy to respond and oblige. And I'm always eager to promote this channel among some friends of mine, obviously on the online YouTube community, and hopefully some of them will watch this and
get involved.
Maybe possibly exactly that's the thing I'm looking for.
That's what it's all about. YouTube. It's all about getting involved in each other's channels. So please, if you are watching, you want to get involved, do drop us over an email, utciadafcb@gmail.com. Come join me and Manny for a show. You're more than welcome. And also, if you are new here and you haven't subscribed, why not press the like, subscribe, and the bell button? And if you're watching on Twitch or Instagram or listening on Spotify, come over to UTCIAD AFCB on YouTube, and we're all there. And just very, very quickly, finally, Sean said it's going to be pretty cold in Newcastle. It most definitely will be very snowy. And shout out to the ladies in the quarterfinals against Swindon on Sunday as well. But from myself and Manny, thank you for joining us. We shall see you in the next one. And up the Cherries, up the Gunners as well. We can't not forget.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're going to win the title this year. You are going to win the title, Manny.
No, mate, listen, I've told you, no more talk of that until April, and then we can see. I'm not popping the champagne yet. I've been burnt too many times. I still have a little bit of PTSD. So I love your optimism. I love your goodwill, but I'm keeping things on even keel. That's all I'm going to say to you.
There we are. So from me and Manny, over and out. Thank you for joining us. We shall see you in the next one.
TalkSport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.
I should be like you, Mel.